good morning, kind of good afternoon. I'm still suffering from jet lag, but I think I'm good. Thanks for being here. I know the first session opposing lunch is tough to choose between, but I appreciate you being here. And I'm going to get into a little bit about sort of me and where I am and what I've been working towards. Before that, I need to send a shout out to the Prime Minister of Canada. Since yesterday, we have legalized pot in Canada. So, yeah. So that's our Prime Minister. I got to party with him at a Pride parade a couple of years ago. But he's doing wonderful things in Canada, really focusing on positive leadership and diversity, which is kind of something that I'm focusing on as well. So I had to do a little shout out. Moving on. So I usually like to start off a talk and do a cheesy quote. This one by Thomas Edison is one that actually kind of impacted me. So many of life's failures are people who didn't realize how close they were to success when they gave up. And I've kind of experienced this a lot in my 10-year career in the game industry. There have been so many times when, you're putting in effort and you're persisting and things aren't working out and you do want to give up or you're feeling insecure or whatnot. And it's kind of at that stage, if you push through that, you really see success. And so that quote has always touched me. Okay, so a little bit about where I am right now, and then I really want to give advice on how I got there. Exactly what I did, what messaging I used, who I reached out to really help pass on case studies that actually worked. And one of my whole missions in the game industry is to help inspire people to do really great things and be successful, but not keep making the same mistakes that others have. So right now, I'm doing quite a bit. I'm running a couple of companies and I'm running quite a few initiatives as well. So I run a PR and marketing company and I service indies. I'm an extended team for indies and I have tons of great clients. I've worked on a lot of game releases. I help indies with marketing, with PR, with influencer reach out, with hiring, with culture, with business development, with funding. So it's been really, really exciting. I've worked with over 20 studios in the past couple of years and some really huge titles. I run a series of game jams, which we'll get into. I run meetups. I run a Girl Force, which is teaching women how to make games. I run a foundation as well, and this foundation actually gives back to the game industry. I send indies to events. I sponsor positive initiatives and things like that. So it's been really busy, but really fun. I currently work with a lot of really cool companies as well. This is a couple. I do a lot of work with Intel and Microsoft and Amazon, which I'm kicking off doing developer workshops for Amazon all over Canada. I also have recently partnered with PAX and Games for Change and the biggest game expo in Canada. So working on a lot of cool things. Okay, so that's been really, really fun, but how did I get here? What exactly did I do to get here? Because if you have the desire and the passion to do really well in this industry, you can easily be a success. You just need the time and the strategy. So when I kicked off, I actually started in HR. HR was my background, and after I graduated university, I started working in television. And I really enjoyed the travel and the creativity and having kind of an impact on a passionate crowd. However, I found TV was a bit cutthroat. There was a lot of egos there, which I didn't really enjoy. And I had been a huge gamer growing up. I love the game industry. And so after I got my foot into entertainment, I found the game industry, and I knew I was going to be there for life. And when I got my first job, I was working in Ottawa, Canada, which is it's the capital of Canada, however, it's a very small city. And when I started working there, I realized the studios were not diverse. There were very women or underrepresented groups at all. And so I started working in a studio and I was like, oh, perfect. I'm here now and I'm doing the hiring. I'm easily going to be able to change this. That was not how it worked. I found that really challenging to hire diverse people, and that started making me think about why that is and how I could change that. Also, I really surveyed the local community. The community did not have a lot of events. There weren't meetups or game jams or anything happening. And the studios were actually poaching talent from each other and not communicating. And we were between two cities and we were losing a lot of talent. Studios weren't super successful. And so I kind of made it a mission to change my career and also change the local community. And it was intense but amazing. So essentially what I did was I kind of looked at my own career and I'm like, okay, I'm running HR departments and I'm helping with culture and hiring. What do I really want to do? What am I really passionate about? And I really wanted to branch higher. I wanted to touch in marketing and company branding and PR and things like that. Although I had no training in it, it was something that I really desired to learn and felt like I would be good at. So I started watching GDC videos and reading a lot. And I actually reached out to a mentor who was in PR at another company and just met them for coffee and asked advice. So I started to get this information, and I asked my CEO to lunch. And I said, we do not have a PR person. We do not have marketing. Give me 1 month to take over these things and see how it goes. And he agreed. So I kind of put everything into that month. And it was a great success. We had a game launch. And in that month, we were featured in a lot of articles and things like that. And so I always tell people to really take your career in your own hands, ask for what you want. Self-learning is huge for me. The videos and the mentors and reading a lot I find makes a really, really huge difference. On the community side, this was the start of something that's really helped me be very successful today and run my own company and be financially viable and pay for my home. Starting in the community, I looked around and I decided to start a meetup. So I started, a monthly meetup where, we had talks and things like that. It was really interesting because I'd never run an event before, but it's, you kind of look at what other people are doing and you kind of look at content that people will want to learn and you talk to the local industry. So honestly, found a venue, got in some food, got some great talks, and it started to grow from there. I found that after a while, you kind of become the pinnacle of your community, right? So you start to get to know all of the studios and all of the people, and you learn how to market effectively. You learn what people want to hear, and you start absorbing that. So without realizing it, you kind of then know the top talent, what the studios are doing, what everyone's working on, what everyone wants to hear about. I started only hiring from industry events and game jams, and I'll get to game jams. But honestly, learning these things has been a skill set that I can't even imagine that I would have, and has really helped shape my career. Another thing, too, is I went and talked to all of the studios locally. And I basically said, we stop poaching from each other, we start working together. We ended up having a extremely strong indie community, and we have some of the top titles, Keep Talking and No One Explodes, Cuphead, Bendy and the Ink Machine, Starwall, all came out of Ottawa. And it's because we're sharing all of this information with each other. We're not poaching. We actually got a studio, a big, huge office, and we all work there together. And we share resources and tools and things like that. And it's been a massive success. We started getting contracts from Mattel and Marvel in Ottawa. We made the X-Men game and Star Wars and things like that. And it's because of this collaboration. While that's happening, if you're the pinnacle of running all of these things, people start to look at you as a leader and an expert. You get so much information and so many contacts. It's pretty insane. And so during this time, I'm learning how to run events, how to message, how to really connect with people. All the while I'm doing my job, but doing all of this extra work in PR and marketing and kind of learning every day and soaking it all in. And if you can do these side projects, I highly recommend it. I want to talk about game jams because game jams have been really, really important to me in my career. So in Ottawa, we'd never had a game jam. And I said, okay, well, let's try one. Let's see how it goes. So I found a warehouse and a sponsor for some food, and I threw it up on Eventbrite. And in small Ottawa, we had about 120 people register. The place was full. It was really exciting. And I was like, oh, my God, okay, so this is a thing. Learned so much during that weekend, but I was like, how do I make this better? How do I make this different? How do I help the community and help the developers and help the studios? And so what I did with this game jam is in year 2, I brought in industry leaders. I had a head of R&D from Ubisoft, for example, come in, a head of the HoloLens from Microsoft, actually, but I brought in industry leading mentors, and they mentored all of the teams during the brainstorm phase, right? And so they were mentoring them on mechanics and keeping the game simple, but also tools that will help them develop. Also, I found a lot of the teams were very developer heavy. And so I decided that I would form art and sound departments. So I kind of did a shout out to the local artists and sound designers who weren't coming to this game jam. And they came in and formed teams. And so what then happened is during this game jam, mentors would be mentoring the teams. The developers would then send assets that they wanted in sound and art to the heads of the sound and art department. And it started to work like a studio. And it was phenomenal. The quality of games that started coming out of this was amazing. I've kept upping the bar. We do now training beforehand on tools and how to do a game jam. All of those games that I had mentioned before, Keep Talking and No One Explodes, Star Wall, Bendy and the Ink Machine, they all came out of game jams, which is crazy, right? You can have a successful studio and a career from a game jam. So doing all these game jams, it really kind of exploded, and now we have a documentary out on the game jam, and I'm actually getting funding to help then fund the winner of the game jam and help them get that game to market and use those resources, so the Unity mentors, the Microsoft mentors, and get that game and hopefully start a successful studio. So it kind of goes back into the whole taking all of these tools and sharing it so indies are learning and not making the same mistakes others have. It's been such a crazy journey, and I'll get into a little bit more of this later, but now I'm talking with PAX, for example, and going to be doing game jams before PAX all over US and then showing off these games at PAX. So when you start these initiatives and kind of pour into it and learn as you go, you have no idea where this is going to take you. Not only was I finding top talent and getting to know the studios and helping change the industry, it also helped my business so much down the line, and I'll tell you about that. I also started what's called a mentor lounge. When I was going to GDC, I was like, okay, so we have all of these industry leaders here. We have all of these people starting studios or wanting to start studios. And essentially I started a mentor lounge where industry leaders were doing almost like a speed dating thing, one-on-one sessions in all areas of game development. And it was kind of similar to the Game Jam, where you started this initiative because you saw a need. It wasn't being done before. And it exploded. Years later, I now do these at E3, at GDC, Reboot, Ludicious, Nordic Game, all over the world. And it's given me the chance to change the industry, meet incredible studios. Blizzard has been a sponsor, for example, incredible studios, and really just help you with your own career while making a difference. I always kind of look at things now like, are you making a difference? Are you helping the indies? Are you helping studios? Are you changing the industry for the better? I always want to check off those boxes. And honestly, just starting small and then growing, learning, talking to people has been massive. And I'll tell you more about exactly how I did that. So all of this is happening, right? So I'm working in a studio, doing all this stuff, doing all of these industry events, and decided to completely leave working internally and start my own company and be self-employed, which I will stay self-employed forever. I absolutely love it. It was a hard decision to do, and I probably hung on a little too long, but two things happened at once to make me realize I needed to go out alone. My job, I was feeling a little bit of lack of respect for my boss. I wasn't feeling empowered. I was doing all these things, but I was feeling held back, and I was feeling dissatisfied because I wanted to move on so many of these things. I was seeing this global opportunity to change the game industry, and I wasn't being given freedom and being told to work on things that didn't have an impact. I couldn't handle that. Also, what really happened that was interesting is that there was an indie studio that was starting up. and they had a game that was starting to make money. They were putting it on Steam, and they were like, okay, we're about to be a success. We're all developers, and we have a couple artists. We don't know how to do our marketing, our PR, our influencer reach out, any business development, any funding, or give visibility at events. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, I can do all of those. I can do all of those. And I essentially, at that point, put together an indie package where I was an extended team for these indies, and I did all of those things. I helped them with the marketing. I did the community management. I did the reach out. I got them visibility at events and conferences. And it was so exciting to me to be able to use what I learned to really, really help the indie community. And so when I did this indie package, I was like, is this a thing? Like, is anyone doing this? And at that time, no one was doing everything that I was offering. So I kind of put together this indie package, of different levels, and I kind of threw it out to my contacts. And in that first month, I had 7 studios sign up for the package. And I was like, oh shit, like now, clearly now I need to grow my team. Like, oh my God. And it was such a good problem to have. Like, oh my God, I'm growing quickly. It was a bit of a shock because it was a surprise to me that it had been happening. I started hiring a team. This is something that I've struggled with over the past 4 years. In the beginning, I kind of looked for, okay, well, I need a community manager and a PR person, and kind of looked for those needs that I had to make it a success. It actually worked really well in the beginning because I was kind of small. I hired contractors, right? And so I'd say, okay, we're working on Bendy and the Ink Machine for the next 3 months, and we're doing PR. So here's a 3-month contract. Let's work together on this. That actually worked really, really well. I probably was underpricing with the clients and, paying contractors too much, and it was kind of a struggle to figure it out. But that totally happens when you start your own company. Getting set up with business and legal accounting, it was a pain. It took some time. However, there are accountants and legal people out there that service startups and indies specifically. I actually put together an indie resource guide. This is for Canada. However, a lot of it can be used globally. So if anyone after this wants the presentation and notes and resources, I'm so happy to send. That charge you, 1% of your revenue, but they'll handle all of your invoicing and your finances and things like that. When you're starting out, these types of services are so invaluable. Being strategic with your time is really important. In the beginning, I was saying yes to every contract. And I was working 7 days a week and all day and not sleeping, and it's super unhealthy. It did allow me to learn really quickly how to price things better and how to manage my time. I don't recommend everyone do that because it is exhausting on you, but you learn super quick. So it's kind of like, do I work my ass off for a year, or do I take my time and grow slowly? It really depends on what you want and what you can handle, but I learned very, very quickly. And the number one thing I learned when I was growing was I always say work and hire the people that are amazing at what you suck at. And I'm very honest with people. I am great at, marketing and relationship building, and I am horrible at, spreadsheets or finances or, this. And I'm very honest about that. And I always hire people that are really, really good at what I'm bad at. And it's allowed me to grow so much quicker. And being honest about what your faults are. If there's something that you're not good at and you don't enjoy doing, don't do it. I actually had a girl reach out to me recently who was starting her own HR company. And she wanted me to mentor her. And at a distance, it kind of looks like, oh, this is going to be a competitor. Why would I do that? I always meet and talk with everyone. I ended up meeting with this woman who was focusing in HR on things, recruiting and branding and things that I actually wasn't at the time. And we ended up partnering. And I'll get more into strategic partners, but having those conversations and actually working with partners has been huge. And advice I'd given to her, because she was spending a lot of her time posting jobs and things like that. And I was like, you worked at Behavior Interactive for 10 years, hiring in AAA. The last thing you should be doing is job postings and admin type stuff. Hire someone for $20 an hour in Canada and focus on what you're good at. And that's helped her excel. But your time is so valuable, and you really need to focus on what you're really, really good at. Business development is a really interesting thing, because I think a lot of people are nervous about doing this kind of work because they're not good at sales or think they're not good at sales. I hate the word sales. I never thought I was a good salesperson ever, and I've realized that it isn't sales whatsoever. It is all about relationships. I never go or approach Amazon or Microsoft or Intel and say, "Oh, hey, I'm doing this event. I need money," or "Hey, why don't you hire me to run your workshops?" I get to know them. Inviting them to be a mentor at an event, something where they get to know me a little bit more. Come be a mentor, something that's free for them. We get to know each other, we stay in touch. I see what they're working on. I always offer them kind of solutions to what they're doing. With Amazon, it was great because they started coming to the mentor lounges and mentoring, and I was showing them off, and they were getting insight from developers at these events. Then they turned into a supporting partner, and they actually started funding the mentor lounges. And last week, they called and they said, "Hey, we want someone in Canada to run all of our developer workshops all over Canada. We'd love for you to do it." That took about 2 years to happen. But if you put in the time and you really, really build those relationships, it will help you in your career. It takes time and effort, and being genuine. I'm never pushy, ever. And you always kind of learn from those interactions. And it's never cookie cutter. It's always personal. Look at what they're doing. Make sure it makes sense for them. So starting my own PR marketing company, it's going great. I'm working with clients. At the same time, I continued what I was doing on the community side. And I'm so glad I did this because a lot of people were like, "Okay, you're doing all this stuff on the side. It's volunteer time. You should be running your own company and making money and focusing on that." I'm so glad I didn't listen to that advice. So, while the marketing and all of that was happening, I started my own conference and expo all across Canada, doing my game jams, my meetups, and diversity initiatives. So I took the success I learned from all of these in Ottawa, and I'm like, why don't I do these in other cities? I moved to Montreal, which is, I think, the second biggest game hub in the world. And there's a different strategy when you start initiatives in big industries and small. And I'll give you some tips there. So I went to Montreal, and now I have the conference and expo, game jams, meetups, diversity initiatives in Montreal. And now I'm doing them in Halifax, and I'm starting in Toronto and Vancouver, other cities. And I'm definitely talking with companies to do these globally. I got on the radar there, and I'm talking to companies in Europe and California to do similar things, which is really, really exciting. And you kind of think, well, when you're starting that, how do you organize that? How do you reach out? I have learned that your messaging and your communication has to be so clear. I had all these, in the beginning, all of these brochures and proposals that are lengthy and colorful and cost a lot. No, I am so back to basics with one-pagers and simple visuals. I'll even read you one of my reach outs that I landed a huge partner with. But what I did was, here's an example. I don't know if you can see it. So when I decided to do all of my events in Halifax, I was like, okay, here's Fax Jam, right? So Halifax Game Jam. Here's CGX Halifax. Here's a Halifax Game Dev Collective. And I started sending these to studios, to leaders in the city, and really connecting with them and showing them the success it's had in other cities. And it moved very, very quickly. You start to have an impact on all of these areas and really make a change. And again, you're meeting top talent, studios, clients, learning from a whole new area. The mission doing these had really been to change the game industry. That's sort of a passion of mine. But it has massively led to knowing bringing on new studios. I don't even really have to ask studios anymore. Like, once they meet me and see what I'm doing, right? They see the give back mission. Companies love this stuff, right? So they are like, "We want to work with you, do our HR, do our marketing." It's been invaluable. If I hadn't been doing all of these community events, I would not be in a position where I am now, completely self-funded, paying for a team, traveling the world. I thank this passion and mission and community initiatives for it. And if you're in an area that does have community initiatives, you can still 100% get involved. When I went to Montreal, they have many conferences and game jams, many events. And I took my time. I surveyed what was happening now. I discovered what was missing, what people still wanted. I teamed up with certain people on certain initiatives. I started my own, but made sure I wasn't stepping on any toes. It's a very political city. I made sure I had the support of the community before I moved forward, and support of some big local leaders like Ubisoft, for example, that's there. You've got to be always strategic and always thinking, not rush ahead. Your marketing always has to be genuine, and it's not challenging. It's the social media pages and sharing it to groups. When I discovered on Facebook that you could post an event and then share that not only to pages that you imagine, but you share the event to groups and then you pick the different groups in that city. So I'm like, oh, okay, so I've shared this event. I'm going to Seattle. I can post it in Seattle Indies, Seattle VR, you know what I mean? Just posting it there. So, and then constantly building up your database of people, So now I have email addresses all over the world for press, for GDC, for each city in Canada or each city I'm doing my events. And so now when I move forward to do an event, all I need to do is share it on social, share it to the newsletter group, and it's usually full. It takes time to build that up, but capturing that information, keeping people updated on positive initiatives and messaging in the right way, clear, concise, super valuable, and it's not complicated. So why all the initiatives? I kind of mentioned that too. It came from this need to change the game industry, and I think that it's great that it can help in a lot of ways, and I think it should in this industry. After 3 years now, like all of my events actually are revenue generating now. I get to pay for the venue, pay for food, I get to pay myself for my time, pay a team that's working there, pay for travel. It didn't take that long. Anyone can do it if they're strategic, which is great. And because of that, I've been able to start a foundation. With my foundation, I actually use funds to help the indie community. I send indies to conferences if they can't afford it. I rent Airbnbs in different cities if indies want to crash there. And I definitely help with diversity initiatives as well and sponsoring really cool events. So it always should be a give back mission for me anyway, which really helped. But a lot of companies get behind that and they want to fund those initiatives. For example, Microsoft reached out to me recently and asked me for my next 2 years of diversity initiatives as they want to fund them. So you can do good things and you can pay for your time and you should. It's really, really important that you benefit from that so that you keep doing it and you keep growing and you're able to do that. I mentioned marketing and communication, trying all these complex things, and it wasn't necessary. One-pagers, reach-outs. When I started my company, I was looking in Airtable and all these complex CRMs. We've got 15, 20 clients. We ended up going back to Google Docs and Sheets and Slack, and that's all we needed. I know big, huge companies need more. Keep it simple. Grow small with those kind of complex things. I think I spent 2 months' salary paying an operations person to look into all of these databases, and we ended up just going back to Google Docs, right? So you don't have to get ahead of yourself. I know there's so many articles about all of these tools and things. Find the ones that work for you. Keep it really simple in the beginning. I'll show you actually, in terms of messaging, when I do business development now, like if I'm reaching out to studios and I'm saying, here's what I'm doing if you have a need, I keep it super simple. Here's what I send visually. I'm like, here's games that we've worked on and studios we've worked with, and my reach out, the content will be about a paragraph. I actually have one. And I just wanted to reach out as I have been working with amazing studios on game launches and interested in working with other indies. Essentially, I do PR, marketing, biz dev, and more. And after 10 years in specializing in these areas and offer super affordable indie pricing. We even rock community management, influencer reach out. Where am I here? Influencer reach out and visibility at events. If you ever have the need, let me know. That's it. That's all I've used. And I've done now 3 reach outs. After 4 years, I've only done 3 reach outs. Each time, 1 in 5 companies have hired me. That's a huge success rate. That's massive. And it's because I'm going to them with all of this positive initiatives, with the simple messaging, with clear, here's the success, and I think that's so invaluable. I get constant messages on LinkedIn or emails, and they're these so much text and it feels salesy. Don't, just be genuine. Try and build that relationship first. Often, if there's studios that I'd like to work with, that I don't know, I'll reach out and I'll say, oh, hey, I'm working on really cool industry initiatives. I'm actually in your area. I'd love to stop by, and link them to my site or something like that. That's it. And more often than not, I've been able to land most of the meetings that I've ever gone to, 80, 90% at least, with that kind of reach out. Okay, so a couple of things that I learned that are really, really important. In my first year, I was like, big team, say yes to, I want to grow, 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 grow. I don't know if that was like an ego thing with starting a new company. It was silly. I grew too quick, too much. I ended up moving my contractors to employees, and that was really, really, that was a big mistake for me. Having 12 people on staff. You're managing a lot of time, a lot of schedules. I lost what I was in love with. I was managing people and the day-to-day admin, and it wasn't right for me, and I shouldn't have rushed into that. Working too many hours, not charging clients enough, things like that. I learned so much in that first year. Now going into year 5, I've decided that I want a smaller, more strategic team. I'm keeping it at 4 contractors so we can scale up and down. So during that times when we don't have 10 or 15 projects, I'm not stressing about the salaries and things like that. That's just knowing what stage you're in and what you're comfortable with, and peace of mind, especially when you're a one-person show. It's worth it definitely in the beginning. More strategic partners. This is really interesting because a lot of people say to me, how can you do so many conferences and so many events and things like that? Well, now what I'm doing is being really, really strategic with partnerships. So before, I'm running my conference, my expo solely, right? All by myself. What I've started actually doing is expanding into new cities, but partnering. I partnered with Comic-Con, with PAX. I'm going to be partnering with South by Southwest. I'm talking to Reboot, who are amazing. And so you go in with these people and you get to do exactly what you're good at. So I'm working now with conferences that have the venue set up and the booths and all that time-consuming logistic stuff that I'm not good at. And they are, right? And so I get to go in and bring the developer focus and the diversity and representation. I get to focus exactly on what I'm good at. I save 80% of the time, a lot of the headache, and I'm actually working with great people. And so I have been forming a lot of these really strategic partners that have let me grow massively with less people, doing exactly what I love. It's been really, really exciting and eye-opening. And so what started as a small initiative in a tiny city in Canada is global. It didn't take many years. It's now a global initiative, which is really, really exciting. And there's so much opportunity for people to have an impact globally if that's something that you want. And also, too, I'm excited to focus a lot more on the Mood Foundation as well going forward, and really changing the industry more. Mentioned some of these partnerships that I'm working with. Things start popping up as you message, right? You're messaging the industry all the time. I'm always sharing what I'm doing. Always, always, always. At GDC, I take testimonials. I share videos. I share pictures of every single event. And now people are coming out of the woodwork. There's a government-funded organization in Montreal that reached out and said, we have funding. We're trying to be present at global events around the world to bring talent and studios to Montreal. We want to put our name on what you're doing and fund more of your trips. Like, people are just coming out of the woodwork to give funding because they can't do what you can do, right? So become an expert. I keep reading these messages that are like, natural talent isn't what gets you somewhere. It's effort. It's time and effort and passion, and that's so true. Your talent, for sure, like my talent for marketing and relationships, is a part of it. But this time that I've put in to become this expert in this niche, it's a niche area. Not many people are good at it, and they're not doing it right. And there's so much opportunity. It is really changing my life, and really giving me a platform to change the game industry for the better. So now, yeah, so events, I mean, all over the world. And it's all completely funded. Like I'm not working at a studio that's paying for it. I'm at the point now where events, pay for my travel and pay for me to come and pay for my time to make their local community better. Um, and there's a lot more work to be doing. Some pieces of advice. I recommend, and this is different for every entrepreneur, but I recommend keeping your day job during your side hustle in the beginning to make sure that you love the side hustle. Sometimes it's great to think about it. I I wouldn't say jump into it. I probably stayed in my day job a year too long, but when I was comfortable and ready. But definitely test the water, spend some time doing it. Um, Try not to say yes to everything, especially in the beginning. For example, I had a client reach out and wanted me to do a Kickstarter, and I had never done one. So I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to do it." I researched. I looked at all successful Kickstarters. I read and I put together a plan that I thought was awesome. Getting out to industry events and supporting other Kickstarters and doing cross promotion and all this great things. And the client didn't like it. He's like, "No, no, no. We don't have time for this. Let's just focus on getting just get the screenshots and the vids up and get it out and get the money." And I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway, and it failed, right? So if you trust your gut, trust what you're doing. Honestly, I truly believe that you can learn anything if you take the time to study and learn. But don't say yes to things you know will be a failure, because that kind of sticks with you. And after that, I did learn from that, and I made sure I never worked on a Kickstarter I didn't believe in again. But in the beginning, it is hard to say no, but it's worth it in the long run. And as I mentioned, grow the team slowly. It can be costly. It is hard to manage a team. My team's remote, so I made sure when I brought on awesome people that no, I can't offer you a big salary, but I'm going to let you work wherever you want, whenever you want. You can take on as many contracts as you want, so the funding that you get is up to you. So this flexibility and freedom let me hire really, really great people. So make sure what you're offering is something that you can and you feel good about. Another thing I did is volunteers. Utilizing volunteers for your events, right? So if you're having a game jam or things like that in the beginning, treat your volunteers amazing. Make sure that they're respected, empowered, treated well. If you can't pay them in the beginning, you're not paying yourself, you're not making any money, that's okay. They want to be involved in the industry. As I went on and on and on, I started hiring my volunteers, sending them to conferences if I could. So then all of a sudden I had the best of the best volunteers. I started to get amazing volunteers. That stuff is shared, and it made my events that much better. So be really strategic with kind of every decision that you're making. I mentioned legal and accounting. It saved my life. I would be probably in jail if I didn't get a lawyer and accountant to look over things. However, there's a lot of documentation out there. I have contracts, I have documents, I have spreadsheets for expenses. I share with anyone that wants them. It is different with different regions, but if you've got the template and you know what you want to communicate and you have someone look that over, that's so much cheaper than having someone write it up. I always share all of my documents, all of information. I think that's really important for us to do in this industry. And I'm not sure how Sweden is. In Canada, we have a lot of government resources available, whether it's funding, whether it's grants for travel or things like that, but getting to know what those are. I actually found ways to really add value to my clients. So for example, I found funding that I couldn't use because I wasn't developing a game, but I was able to introduce the funding partner to all of my clients, right? And so I then decided, okay, there's a whole bunch of perks that I can offer my clients that no one else can. They're going to be featured mentors at all my mentor lounges. They're going to be offered speaking gigs and a free expo booth at all my events. They're going to get extra funding. I'm going to introduce them to all the publishers and press that I know. So offering what other people aren't, and communicating that, I'm offering you something that no one else can, and it's just part of being a client, and I'm not charging you for that, has been hugely valuable as well. Once I have that information in that first introduction, it takes me no time to introduce them to everyone else. But if you're starting new, that takes a lot of time to build up. So kind of knowing your value is really, really important as well. I always like to say this too, like, so I don't know if I have ADD. I think I probably do. I've always been really high energy and bouncy or whatever. And people used to say, "Oh no, you have ADD. You're going to have a hard time working or whatever." No, I actually thank my energy and everything for letting me do so many things that I'm able to do. When people kind of look at their faults, I kind of hate that because there's so much strength there, and focus on the strength. And sometimes your faults are a strength. People say, "Oh, ADD is bad." No, no, no. I'm running like 5 companies. It's amazing. I love it. So I really like kind of when I meet people who do feel imposter syndrome or insecure, not looking that way about yourself. There's so many strengths there, and your faults you can turn into strengths, or knowing them is a strength. I think that's really, really important, and I think that we need to really boost each other up in this industry, and I think we're getting better at that, which is great. And also, too, I know what I suck at, logistics, and I know that there are people great at that. So giving them the chance to shine makes me actually really, really happy as well. I want to quickly talk to you about diversity and inclusion initiatives, because it's been something from the beginning that's been really important to me. Kicking off, I actually started a Girl Force, which is industry leaders in Ottawa teaching women and non-binary people how to make games. And we started with the students had no experience. How I found the teachers, this is completely not for profit. I asked industry leaders in Ottawa, both men and women. I think that it's really important in all diversity and inclusion initiatives that everyone is welcome and everyone should be involved. I looked at other groups in similar cities that were doing it, and we learned from them. We asked them to mentor us, and they did. They shared study guides with us, which was great. And then we actually went on to mentor other areas and groups that wanted to start it. So if you're looking to start a diversity inclusion initiative, we'd be happy to help and provide study guides and plans and what went wrong and what we learned from. But it really helped ignite to me that I wanted to focus more than just, kind of women in games. I really want to focus on all areas of underrepresented groups. And so I started doing, mentor events and bringing in leaders that teach studios how to hire diverse workforce and create inclusive policies, capturing that data to share with studios. There's a lot of studios that want to do better. They don't know how. Same with events. There are events that have reached out to me that said, "Hey, we're getting burned because we're not diverse." Well, you should want to be diverse. But I'm now mentoring events around the world on how to be representative. It's not challenging. It takes time, and you have to be strategic about it. An announcement that came out yesterday, which I'm really proud about, is it's an inclusive speaker bureau. So my company has now partnered with a company in California, M2 Insights, and we've actually been developing a database of vetted experts from underrepresented groups. I think we have about 130 now, PhDs, leaders in the field. And we're actually going to be presenting this database to events all over the world. We're bringing on supporting partners that will help fund the travel. And so now events all over the world will be more representative and more diverse, which we're really excited about. And again, this is something, it is a give back mission. It is something that we're volunteering to do. But now there's so many companies in the world that are like stepping up that want to fund it. Which is really, really exciting. So it's really important to think, yeah, it's great to do these things, but you need to also take care of your career and yourself as well, which is how you're going to be able to keep doing it. I always say positive initiative dominoes. This is kind of like a cheesy thing I do. But I'm affected by seeing positive initiatives. I learn from them and I share them. I think that's really important to do. And if anyone here wants any information, if you want information on starting your own company or initiatives, or you want me to read messaging you're sending out or anything, I'd be more than happy to. My contact information is up here. Feel free to contact me anytime with any advice. I love it. I love mentoring. Yeah, that's it for me. Yay. I think we have time for some questions. Yeah?
Raise your hands if you have any questions, and we will come with the microphones so you can talk.
Hi, my name is Henrik.
Hello, Henrik.
I'm trying to get the IGDA running in Sweden. Do you have any experience with the IGDA that you could tell us a little bit about, perhaps?
I do have experience with the IGDA. I actually worked there for 2 years. I was the head of partner member relations. I actually left. It was one of the jobs that I actually left when I started my own company. The IGDA for me, I actually, to be completely honest, did not find the chapters super helpful, in my opinion. And that's why I actually started Game Dev Collectives, which offered more resources and time in terms of setting them up. But again, like, you know, local meetups are really important, and I know that every chapter is different, and there's some really engaged ones. My recommendation is, if there is chapters in your city, go see if they're worthwhile. I always say collaborate instead of compete whenever possible. If there isn't a chapter and you want to either start one or start your own initiative, and there's not one nearby, I would say do it immediately.
Okay. Can I take the next question?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Thank you. It was really interesting. You said artists didn't really come to these game jams that you saw in the beginning. How did you approach local art groups, and what kind of art groups did you bring in? Did they need to know some skills to begin with, to interface with the game with the programmers and so on, or?
That's a really good question. So what I did was, there was a local art meetup group. It was a monthly art meetup group called Pens and Pixels. And so I went to the head of that and I said, hey, would your group of artists want to come in and form a team and create assets for the game jam? And so the head of Pens and Pixels and I, we actually have been we're doing like art and game jam, like a whole bunch of things. But we decided, because in Ottawa, it was artists and developers were very separate. We were like, okay, we need to do this bring together mission. And we were like, in a world where artists and developers come together. Like, we're actually making a theme song. So he got the first year, the artists came in and they had different skill sets. So there were a couple of students, a couple intermediates and seniors, all different levels. And so what we did was we would have their skill sets and their expertise, right? So we would have that. So when a developer sent in a request, he would then assign it to the artist that was best able to do it. And we actually had some press after that because the artists were nervous coming in, but they were like, oh my God, we've learned how to communicate better with developers. We've learned so much in one weekend, like more than a semester in school. They were nervous at first, but now it's like a fully formed department. It took a little bit of time, but we have all levels of artists come in. It helps with their portfolio. It's been a great mission. It was a little weird at first, but now it's working really, really well. And same with the sound departments. And it's almost working like a mini studio now. But in terms of so I was lucky where that art meetup group was already there. If they weren't there, what I would then do is reach out to, if there was any online groups, Facebook groups for artists, graduating class for art school, and I would reach out to a couple people that I thought were leading the industry. I've done a lot of one-on-one reach out. Hey, I see that you're working, here as an artist. I'd love for you to get, a couple of your connections together in. I do a lot of one-on-one reach out, which takes time, but it has paid off dramatically. We good?
Any more questions?
Or lunchtime. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate you coming.